What's up YouTube? I'm Sketchy Brett, YouTube's sketchiest artist, and today we're going to be focusing not on buildings but still on urban sketching. Too often we scan the landscape and we concentrate just on the buildings when we're talking about urban sketching. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to pick out those special moments from your urban landscape so that you can concentrate on the vibe of the city. So let's jump into one right now. Right, so now imagine you're walking down this city street and you see this scene unfolding in front of you. There's a couple of people sitting at a table with an umbrella, and it really gives the vibe of what's going on here. And too often we walk past this because we're concentrating just on the buildings. So find yourself scenes like this, and you can practice by just looking on Pinterest or something like that for a reference photo like this. Or you can go and take this exact photo and go along with me. So I'm starting at the table because that's going to give me my setting. It's going to ground the photo. And then we've got this guy who's sort of sitting here. And what these sorts of photos do is they allow us to really get into the vibe of a city. The city is made of the people that live in it. It's not just the buildings. And it's not to say we can't concentrate on buildings, but we've done so many of those that I wanted to show you that if you're working on a sketchbook for your travels or something like that, you want to really make sure that you've got elements like this, because that tells the whole picture. That tells the whole story of what you were up to. So what's important is a lot of what we've been talking about lately, and that's this minimalist approach. We don't want too much going on. If we start to put in every person walking past here, we're going to lose the scene. So obviously this umbrella is important. So we slowly just sketch out its basic shape. And then we work in the details, nice and loose. This is what's going to make this whole thing come alive. So take your time and really keep your lines loose, because that's going to help show that there's movement here. Especially when a scene is of something like this, the loose lines are even more important. Now I want this sign sitting here because it's nice and interesting, and it helps box in our composition. Again, still keeping it nice and loose, but on this edge of the building, because we're not concentrating on the building, we just want to pick out a few little details on it and then let it fade off of the page. With signs, try not to write anything specific, but make it look like it's still text, because we don't want it to be too noticeable. Otherwise, it actually starts to take away or become the focus of your entire sketch, and that's not the point. So now we've got this. Now this is a good place to stop, right? But we can do more. So either you're going to stop here or we're going to look for something else. So there's people walking in the distance here. That's quite nice. There's a little couple here holding hands. That's quite cute. So I can't help myself. We're going to put them in. And maybe that's what you were talking about, or maybe that's what you were observing. And that's also important. It's like, what were your emotions at the time? What were you thinking about? What was catching your eye? And put that into your urban sketch, because, you know, this is ultimately for you. So that, and then I want to put in this tree. But now, the tree is obviously much bigger, but it's a perfect tool to really box in this composition and balance it from the other side. So I'm going to do that. Put in this pavement. And there we have it. And this is the type of scene that if you capture it in this way, as part of a sketchbook, is really going to add a lot of character. So we could leave it here, or we could add some color. Let's add some color. This is very much a travel-sized watercolor kit, nothing fancy. It's still dirty because we're traveling. Well, that's going to be my excuse. And we can just start making up some colors here. Remembering that on the sides, we don't want these to be dominant. So lots of water, not a lot of pigment, right? Even our tree, so we've got some green that's still sitting here, so I'm gonna put that in, but we don't want it to dominate the image. So you want to use lots of water and let it sit as an additional element. And with trees or any plants, things like that, I always like to dot in some green. I always think of it as like leaves kind of cascading down. It helps add some movement and some interest. Now I haven't done a background. I don't want one in this case because I want to keep the focus here. I don't want it to get too busy. We've got this bright yellow sign. That would have been part of the memory. And this is what we're building. We're building a memory of something. We're trying to bring out the emotion of what you were seeing while you were there. So that becomes our focus. We have this orange tablecloth. We'll come back to a lot of these because we can do washes. We're working in watercolor, so we can do these washes as we go along. So put down a base, let it dry, and then we can come back. So like in this case, on the building, that's pretty much dried. I just want to bring in a little bit of depth. Remember not to just do blanket washes one over the next, otherwise you kind of lose the whole point of it. We got this white tablecloth. Now people always leave white things white, and yet they're not. So always a light gray or a dusty brown, something like that. Now if I was guessing, we probably somewhere in Portugal, because I'm just looking at the colors, and that was obviously important because that's nice and bold and we want to keep that. So don't be scared of working with bold colors, especially in this sort of example. Now I'm just drawing some of this water back because I don't want too much on the page for our first wash. So I'm just taking some of it back. And that's because I want to be able to have variance, so that we can come in and do additional washes. Now we need to wait for this to dry, otherwise our green is just going to mix in, and we don't want that. So wait for this one to dry completely and then move in to something else for now. Now this guy has a nice blue shirt on, so we can work on that. And he's got, in this image, it looks like almost the same. It almost looks like he's in a cat suit because it's all the same color. So I'm going to just lighten this up so that we can see he was in a pair of jeans. This is really up to you with how detailed and how accurate you want to capture it. Right, so now we've got this guy. Now we've got to consider these people. Now there's a couple of ways we could do it. We could paint them as they are, but what I would rather do in this case is I would like to take that same blue, muddy it up a little, and do a light wash over them so that they almost just in shadow. Because I don't want them to bring too much focus. They're adding something to the scene, which is great, but I don't want them to now take away focus from what I had originally chosen. So that's how we can do that. Now in this reference image, this guy's looking away. I've chosen to face him forward, remembering that this is a live image. This would have been changing as you were looking at it. So pick the angle that works for you. Right, this looks just about dry enough. So we'll mix up a green. There. Okay, lots of water again. We paint in a wash. And then now we can go straight back into our red color that we had somewhere. And we can work in some darker tones in places. To bring some shape to this. Now this tree, we could leave this trunk if we wanted. It doesn't need to be worked, but I think it'll be quite nice, so I want to add it in. But in the same way that this was very subdued, you want to do the same here. You don't want it to be too bright to saturated. Dot in a few bits here and there so that it will give you some texture almost. And then we're going to go back into the green. There we go. Give a little bit of shape to our people sitting over there. So you'll see we're jumping around the page, and we're jumping around the page because we want to add incremental changes to the tone and to the overall aesthetic of the image. So take your time there, let the wash dry, and then each time it dries, you will have an opportunity to come in and add more to it. And if you think you've messed up, let it dry, don't work it while it's wet. Now the last thing I want to do is they're kind of floating here, so I want to give them something to ground themselves. And I'm just going to use a light gray. It's going to bleed in there, which is great. And again, we'll leave a wash and we'll be back in a sec to add more to that. We want a bit of shadow just to really ground these people and our subject. And we are done. So there we have it. This is really about concentrating on other elements other than the buildings inside of your urban sketches. So while you explore the cities of the world, pick out interesting scenes, focus in on them, make the building very supplementary to your overall sketch, and fill up your sketchbook with more than just buildings. If sketching people is something that scares you, this video is a great place to start to build your confidence. If you're in the mood to sketch and paint along with me, here's a great video, beginning to end, with everything in between. And until next week, keep it sketchy.